Alright, today we're on covered door detail. You can see I've got a split right here, and at first I thought it was just a separated joint, but it's not, okay? If you've got kids, you may be familiar with this sound. And eventually something like this may happen. And also the other thing that happens is the holes that your hinges mount into strip out. And I'll show you a little tip at the end of the video on how to tighten those up as well so they stay put, okay? Let's go ahead and get the hardware stripped off this door and get it fixed. Alright, so I'm not much of a woodworker, and this is the largest bar clamp that I have in my possession. Now, people who work with wood have large clamps like this, and some have pipe clamps that slide onto a length of pipe, allowing them to clamp large projects like doors. What we're going to use today is a simple tie-down strap, and I assume many of you have one of these around, and if not, I'll link to some tie-down straps down below so you can check out the price for yourself, but they're fairly inexpensive. I am going to remove this hinge, but we'll leave the handle in place. This is the back side of the door, and the handle's right on that side there, okay? Let's go ahead and remove the hinge here real quick. Alright, so let's get the tie-down strap in place here before we start applying any glue. Now, I've got this side running underneath and kind of in between the handle, if you remember what the handle looks like. We'll take a look at it here in just a minute. Okay, and on this side, on the ratchet side, there's actually a slot that the strap runs through. And what's going to happen is, as we apply this ratchet action, it's going to wind the strap and it's going to apply pressure and it's going to close this crack up for us. But you want to get it kind of as tight as you can before you start ratcheting. Now, if you're concerned about marring on the side of the door, which our doors are beat to you know what, I'm not too concerned about it, but you could use a rag or a blanket or a towel or something. Okay, so I'm just going to get this a little bit tight. We're going to give it a couple of ratchets here. That's it. I just want it kind of in place. All right, at this point, and you saw I actually started to close it up a little bit. At this point, I want to apply some glue. Alright, just a couple things worth mentioning here before we apply the glue. If this were an angled joint running right to the corner here, I would have a strap running in each direction, okay? And if you're assembling a door that maybe came apart, you might want to use a couple of straps in each direction. And also you want to make sure that you allow your center panel to float. Oftentimes, if you've ever pulled a door apart like this, you'll notice that the center panel is not actually attached. It's a floating panel. And the reason for that is it's allowed to compensate for varying humidity and temperature because the wood will actually expand and contract, okay? So let's get a generous amount of glue in on this side, then we'll flip it over and get some down inside the crack, and then we'll clamp it up. I'm just going to take a toothpick here and make sure that it's down in there really well, and I've got plenty. Those of you who watch my video, you know I spray things down. I use a lot of glue. We're going to wipe it off anyways, but better use too much than not enough. That's my theory. Alright, let's flip it over. We'll glue the other side. We'll clamp it down and clean it up. Alright, so the crack's not down into the panel. It's just right there, but I definitely couldn't see it on the other side. So let's go ahead and glue this up here real quick. Alright, we're going to clamp it up. It's going to squeeze most of that out. We'll clean it up. And you don't want to overdo it, but we want it nice and tight. You can see that it basically squeezed glue out. Okay, take a wet rag and we'll wipe off the excess here. And we're going to let this sit for 24 hours. Alright, let's see how we did here. I just want to show you a quick shot of the tie-down strap in case you're not familiar with them. It's a double release mechanism. You've got one here and you've got one here. And typically you'd pull it forward and then pull this one back and then loosen it up and kind of go through that. But we don't have that much tension on this door, okay? Let me reposition the camera so we can check out the crack together. Alright, so we're looking pretty good here. That's the crack right there. You can barely see it. You certainly won't be able to when it's mounted. Last night upon reviewing the footage, I realized I didn't get glue down into the crack quite as far as I really wanted to. So make sure you're running your toothpick down in, because the more surface area you get that glue on, the better it's going to hold over time. Alright, so let's get the hinge mounted. I'm going to cover hinge adjustment because if your hinges aren't properly adjusted, then your door may not be staying closed all the way, and that's a common problem. And then we're going to cover how to tackle a hinge mounting hole that may be stripped out. Alright, before we mount the door, let's quickly cover the cupboard door hinge adjustments that are available on this particular hinge anyways. All right, you can see we've got a mounting slot. This is where the screw goes when you mount the door to the cupboard, and it allows us to align the doors vertically. So if you've got one door that's slightly raised or lowered from the other doors, you could loosen up your mounting screws and then make the appropriate compensation. All right, you've got this screw here, and this is going to allow us to, let's see if I can get it on camera, to bring the hinge closer or further away from the cupboard. You can see as I wind the screw, the mounting slot moves in or out, so that's going to allow us to adjust the gap between the door, the back side of the door, and the cupboard. And we'll be able to see that when I get the door mounted, okay? Then we've got this screw here, and this is going to allow us to move the hinge closer and further from the door. And hopefully you can see that as I wind the screw. It gives us a little bit of adjustment there. So the three things we can affix with these adjustments are obviously the height of the door, vertical alignment with other doors on the cabinets. If the hinges are not in line, your door may not stay closed when you close it. You may close it and then it swings open slightly on its own, okay? That could be a hinge adjustment problem. And also if the doors are not sitting squarely on your cabinets, for example, if you look across the top of your doors or the bottom, and you have a gap to the left that's greater than the gap to the right when your door is mounted on the cabinets, you may need to square it up using this adjustment. All right, let's go get this thing mounted. All right, so this door's got a couple things going on. We've got this motion here, and you can see that the hinge is loose from the cabinet. Now, we could take a Phillips screwdriver and just tighten that screw down, but likely what's happened is the hole has stripped out or become loosened from repeated opening and closing or slamming. And the other thing we've got going on with this door here is you can see that the distance or the gap at the top is much wider than the gap at the bottom. Okay, so there's a couple things going on. Obviously, if we were to draw this in, that may help. But also we have that hinge adjustment that we just covered in the garage. So I'm going to remove the door. We're going to take care of this hole that's stripped out. And then we're going to make the proper adjustment on the hinge, and we'll be done. Alright, so you can see as I wind the screw in that there's not much resistance and extremely wobbly. So what ends up happening is as you open and close the door multiple times, it's just going to pull that screw out. It's going to loosen up. So you could use a larger screw. Of course, you'd want to use a coarse thread as well. Or what I like to do is take a toothpick, and I'm just going to wind it in there as far as I can and cut it off flush. And I'm going to do it twice here. Okay. Now you could use a matchstick as well, but matchsticks are typically a softer wood. Toothpicks are pretty rigid and more of a hard wood, but you could use whatever you have. So what we're going to do here is get the door mounted, and we'll adjust the hinges. Alright, so I can immediately tell that there's more resistance, obviously because there's more wood in the hole than there was. So what we need to do here, before we tighten it down all the way, is to make sure that your door is vertically aligned with your other doors. That was that slot that we discussed out in the garage. Okay, we get the top one here. Alright, we still have that gap at the top, but I'm on the bottom hinge here. So first thing we're going to do is wind this screw in clockwise and bring the hinge in to where it's making contact with the cupboard. And now we'll zoom in on the top hinge. Alright, let's wind this one in here. Alright, now the gap is looking pretty good. Let me just see how the door closes here real quick. We may need to make that final adjustment, which is this screw right here. Alright. Alright, the door closes and stays closed, which is fine, except I've got to square it up a little bit. Remember, this adjustment moves the door closer and further from the hinge, okay? I've got to wind it in just a hair, and then I'm going to shut it. It's a little bit of a process, so I'm going to let you go right here. Give me that thumbs up if you found the video helpful, and hit that subscribe button down below if you're not a subscriber. I appreciate that. Leave questions and comments, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for watching.